Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Xony, and today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further, let's go. Now let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. I met my wife as a patient in the hospital. She was my nurse during my recovery from surgery. I just had a tumor removed and I was high on life. I felt like I'd been given a second chance and I wanted to make the most of it. When I met this angel of a nurse, I wanted to make her mine. I started flirting with her, and when she flirted back, I gave her my number. I told her I wanted her to text me when she got home while I was stuck in the hospital. I was ecstatic when she did. On the day I was discharged, she was off the clock, but she still came by to bring me flowers. I asked her out to dinner and the rest is history. We got married within the same year. She was 27 and I was 30. It quickly became routine for her to tell me about the people she worked with and the patients she cared for without violating HIPAA, of course. My wife had told me many stories about this older woman named Joyce. She had a sense of humor that you wouldn't expect in an older woman, and she was far too honest in some situations. Her brutal honesty made my wife laugh on more than one occasion. One day, my wife told me with tears in her eyes that Joyce was sent home to live with her grandson, the only family she had left until she would pass away. She told me she'd given Joyce's grandson her cell number, in case they needed help with anything. It was only 2 days later that my wife got a text from him an hour after she'd gotten home from work. She went back out the door, all too eager to help. When she'd been gone for hours, I finally decided to check the family locator app. She was at an address across town. I assumed where Joyce lived with her grandson. I texted her, asking if she would be home soon. She didn't reply, but shortly after that, her dots started traveling home. When she got there, I asked her why she didn't reply and what took so long. She played dumb, like she didn't realize how long she took, and she seemed way too happy. Couldn't downplay it. She tried to say that Joyce was really sick and needed her help to get comfortable and situated enough to reassure her grandson. I asked why she was so happy if Joyce was so sick, and the smile vanished. She said they were good people and she liked being around them. I was suspicious that she did something else. Something much better than taking care of a sick person. I asked her again why it took so long to get resituated, and my wife snapped. She called me impatient. She told me I needed to let her do her work and that she didn't need me to be waiting on her to get home either. She told me to go about my night whether she was home or not. Her words hurt. I told her I always looked forward to our nights together and that I hated it when she was called into work or forced to stay late at the hospital. I told her I hated when I didn't get to see her for more than a few hours in a day. She told me she couldn't help that and I just have to deal with it. She was distant for a few weeks after that, making at least 3 more house calls to the same address within that time. On the 4th weekend, since she snapped at me, she told me she was going to a funeral. I asked if it was for Joyce, and she hesitated before saying no, that it was for another patient she didn't expect to pass. I asked for their name, and she quickly gave me one. I searched for the name in the obituaries while she was gone, but I only found one for me. I drove by the funeral being held for her, and saw my wife being caressed by a grieving young man. They appeared to be a romantic couple. My throat swelled up as I watched them from down the road. The young man gave an emotional speech, and I saw my wife give him a kiss on the cheek when he returned to her side. He put his arms snugly around her. They stayed practically against each other for the entire service, until they got in a black car together and drove off. I checked the locator app, but found that my wife had turned her off. I still drove to the address where she took care of Joyce. There I found the black car they were in, along with a bunch of old furniture and clutter covered up in the driveway. I knocked on the door hard, and it took several minutes for AP to answer. When he did, it looked like he just threw on a shirt and sweatpants to answer the door. I demanded to see my wife. AP looked worried, like he knew who I was. My wife emerged, putting on her shoes. She started asking me what I was doing there, and why I was spying on her. I caught her off guard when I asked her where her bra was because she clearly wasn't wearing one. She turned bright red, and said she didn't wear one that day. I told her not to come home because I saw them acting like a married couple at the funeral. She immediately shut down. I could almost see the wheels in her head turning, realizing how bad this was. She didn't want to lose me or be kicked out of the house. Just then, AP told her she could move in with him. She didn't look completely relieved, but she was empowered enough to agree and move out a few days later. For 6 months, I was in a dark place. I felt like she was getting away with breaking my heart and wasting years of my life, but then karma struck. AP's ex-wife called him when she got word that another woman had moved in. She wanted him to kick her out so she and the kids could move back in. When he broke the news to my ex and kicked her out, she lost it. She tried to contact me for months, leaving panicked voicemails on my phone that explained everything and proved how desperate she was. She even showed up at my house and waited around outside for me to come out or arrive home. I managed to avoid her until 2 days before our court date. She was ordered not to go back to the house and was also fired from her job at the hospital, probably because she was miserable and couldn't show up to work. She got to the lowest point in her life when she had to move in with a stranger she met online. So that's where she is now, and I don't see her getting out of it anytime soon. Now let's get into the second story. My wife and I worked our own home business together, cooking chicken wings and a few other specialties in our little food trailer. We travel with our 3 kids all over the country. As far as we felt like going to get to big festivals and places, we could stay and work for a few days or even a few weeks at a time. We met 15 years ago at a local birthday hoedown for a mutual friend of ours. For me, it was pretty much love at first sight. I asked her to dance, and we ended up dancing most of the time together. We both wanted to start our own family business and have exactly 3 kids. She had great ideas and gave me the impression that nothing could stop her. During our business launch, I fell in love with her even more. She was extremely thoughtful, focused, and talented, and really nice to look at. She supported my ideas and helped me build our food trailer from scratch. She helped me to stay on track if I ever felt any doubt. We thrived at the food trailer business, but after doing it for several years with all 3 kids, we decided it was time for a change. We started buying rundown houses and flipping them for a profit. This was the ideal career for us. Although I was more of a handyman and she was more focused on homeschooling the kids, we still worked together and shared each responsibility. Our RV was like a home base, and whatever house we were working on became a secondary home until it was time to take on the next one. After our youngest turned 5, I noticed a change in my wife. She started playing games on her phone and messaging more people. She said she was chatting with other moms in the city, trying to plan playdates for our kids. I bought this excuse for a while, but a month passed with her typing away on her phone, and she never left the house with the kids. She left a few times by herself to visit her elderly father 2 hours away. While she was in the bathroom one night, I instinctively checked her phone for the first time. I could not believe what I read. She was sexting and talking to some guy. But the more I read, the more I was certain this was a fake account. I wanted to share photos, and I was devastated to see photos of her most intimate parts. No part of her was left to the imagination. My heart started racing and my vision started blurring. My hands were trembling as I realized I was going to have to divorce my wife. I opened the bathroom door and told her she was cheating on me. She said no, but I showed her the messages. Her jaw dropped and it looked like her soul retracted into her body as she was left with an autopilot stare. I asked her who the heck this was. She returned to the surface and told me it was probably a fake person that was making it look like she replied to them and said those things when she never actually did. I showed her the pictures of her own body and she retracted again, looking ghostly pale. Then I read her one message where she named me as her husband and said I had become so boring to her that she wished she could leave me for AP. But she couldn't because she didn't want to lose the kids. I paused to see her reaction and there was nothing. I kept reading on to where they talked about her secretly filing for divorce in custody before leaving in the middle of the night with the kids. She opened her mouth but she closed it again. Her face started turning red and she finally told me she was sorry and that everything on her phone was just talk. She didn't mean anything she said and it only made her feel good to pretend she was serious about them. I asked her what she meant by them and that's when she retracted into her body again. I went through her other messages and found that months ago she was talking to a completely different guy in the same manner before he ghosted her. Another guy rejected her advancement, claiming he was married before blocking her. I looked her in the eyes and told her she was married too, but not for long. She started begging me not to file for divorce, reminding me that she loved me and the kids would be devastated. I told her at least I was decent enough to warn her instead of filing in secret and then kicking her out in the middle of the night. We argued back and forth for hours. After crying, she resorted to yelling, and after I told her to get out, she became angry and bitter with me, even though this was all her fault. She called AP and told him what was going on. She packed her bags and tried to start packing the kids' bags. I told her not to wake them up in the middle of the night and take them from their home. I told her if she won custody in court, I would let her have them, but they needed time to adjust to this and process it. She must have agreed with me because she left without even waking them up to say goodbye. I couldn't believe how easy it was for my wife to leave our home and family that night. A few hours passed before she called me, sobbing. She told me he wasn't the person he said he was, and she needed me to forgive her now, more than ever. I told her I would never forgive her for this, and she wasn't welcome back. I hung up on her and tried to keep her out. But she still managed to get inside, and I knew the police wouldn't make her leave because her name was on the mortgage too. So, I told her she had to sleep in the spare room and leave me alone completely. I told her she could continue schooling the kids until the divorce was final. She accepted my terms because she was at my mercy. In the months leading up to the court hearing, she was trying so hard to get me back and be the perfect wife. She didn't use her phone the entire time, and the night before the hearing, she tried to seduce me. I'm proud to say it didn't work. I knew she was only doing it because AP didn't turn out to be the person she thought he was. She was ordered to leave my house without alimony payments, and she could only get visitation with the kids on my terms. It was exactly how I had hoped it would go, and I try every day to remain strong as a single father. When I was ready, I allowed my wife to continue schooling the kids in the RV. She does it, and every day, she hopes I'll take her back as my wife. I always tell her when pigs fly.